back. I'm joined by Mark Connolly and Andrew Grove of Chester Resources. Gents, thanks for joining us.
Thank you.
Nice to be here.
Just for those less familiar, perhaps one of you could just brief overview of the company.
Okay. Well, Chester, it's an ASX-listed gold exploration development company. We have a project in Senegal in West Africa. We've made some discoveries on that project over the last couple of years, built up a resource base that's it's 950,000 ounces now. Put a scoping study, wrapped a scoping study around that clearly shows a high value potential gold development on the site. We continue exploration to expand that resource base, and in the background we're doing our feasibility study to de-risk technically and get ourselves in a position to build the next mine in the next couple of years. So.
Before we go into the economics and the mine itself, just remind us of the capital structure of the company.
Okay, we have about 588 million shares on issue. Share price today is about 7.5 cents. That gives us a market capitalisation of about 450 million Aussie dollars. 45, sorry. Be nice. And we have about $8 million in cash. Biggest shareholder is Silvercorp, it's a TSX-listed silver producer. We have Acorn Capital recently buying into the stock, and we have a number of high net worths who own the larger proportion of the shares.
Brilliant, okay. So obviously you've released a scoping study at the moment, you're working on a DFS. Let's actually just remind people of what the economic value of this deposit is.
Okay,
as it stands.
Look, we did our first resource in November last year. It was over 2 of the deposits, Area A and D, and since then we've done resources on Karakara and Buguda, which is further to the south. So the scoping study was only really done on the first 2 deposits, which was 780,000 ounces. That delivered NPV at 1,600 of $200 million, IRR of 47%. Importantly, really rapid payback of 17 months. The all-in costs are less than $800 an ounce in the first 2 years, which we're mining Area D, which has shallow oxide mineralisation, is mid $500 an ounce. So it's a rapid payback, high value project. But we're currently updating that scoping study to include the new deposits. So Karakara's 116,000 ounces at 2.1 and Buguda is a little smaller, but it's circa 5 grams per tonne. So adding those should add a significant value to what is already quite a valuable project.
Okay, and what about life of mine and what the sort of production rates are expecting?
The scoping study is about 6 years, 100,000 ounces a year. When we add the new resources, we'll be up to 7 or 7.5 years. But the intention is to keep growing that resource. Yep. There's lots of prospects in the region on the tenements that we think, this is a 10-year, easily a 10-year mine life. And if you do a regional play, it's 10, 20 years sort of.
Let's take a step back geologically and the tenements. Obviously, like I said, what's the resource at the moment and what sort of, say you were talking to a geologist, say in a pub or wherever you talk to geos, what would you say in terms of what the rocks in the ground look like and how is the gold actually sitting there?
Okay, so look, it's a recently discovered area. It's covered by laterite. That didn't show the prospectivity of the area until about 2017-18 when we did auger sampling through that laterite. It sits on the Senegal Mali Shear Zone rocks that host Lulu, Gonkotto, Fekola. So there's 50-60 million ounces of inventory just over the border in Mali. In fact, Gonkotto is only 7 k's away. If you put the drone up, you can actually see it. So it's the similar host rocks, carbonate sequence rocks within granites and intrusions. So what we're seeing, what the geochemistry showed is there's a 15 by 15 kilometre geochemical footprint, anomalous gold footprint between our tenement and our neighbour's tenement, which are Barrick, that it's only had 3 years of drilling. So we've defined 950,000 ounces already. Barrick aren't focusing on resources, they're trying to find that big mineralised system, but they have found multiple intercepts of good grade mineralisation over wide areas. Just tying it together has been a bit more challenging for them. But, I think that whole area, there's 3 to 4 million mineable ounces in there. And it will come together at some point.
And I guess that's a step for you guys in a way, is you need to start unlocking more of these ounces. What's the plan of action in terms of drilling? Is there a drill campaign planned for this year or next?
Yeah, we've just gone through the wet season. Yep. So the rigs are about to turn back up on site. They may actually already be there. next round of drilling is really focused on adding ounces and proving the prospectivity of the project. So we've got a number of targets under the existing resource, particularly Area D, that we think there's a development of another high-grade lode, that we've got a couple intersections in, we've got to follow that up. If that's the case, then that'll add a lot of ounces, but it'll also show that that high grade repeats at depth and it lifts the prospectivity a lot. There's a whole bunch of geochem anomalies that we haven't got any drilling or little drilling into, so we've been very successful at converting geochem anomalies into mineral inventory, but there's a whole lot more on the tenement that need drilling.
And you mentioned at depth there. I mean, can you just remind us of average grade of the ounces? Do these deposits start at surface, and sort of what depths have you already drilled down to at the moment?
So we haven't drilled too deep, and as we've been targeting the near surface mineralisation with the geochemistry, so the average strip ratio of the scoping study is 3.6, so it's low, and we have Area D is a supergene blanket. It starts from 10 metres from surface and is 20 to 40 metres thick, and then there's some mineralisation below that. Area A has a horizontal shoot about 250 metres long, it sits about 60 metres from surface, and the new deposit Caracara is shallower than Area A, so it's probably 20 to 30 metres from surface, and it's about 2 grams. So the resource average grade is 1.7. We'd expect to, and the scoping study is about 1.7, but we'd expect that to lift up a little bit with the inclusion of Caracara and Buguda. And maintain that sort of low 3 to 1 strip ratio.
Okay. In terms of permitting the project, obviously based in Senegal, what is the process that you have to go through to really have you started the process, and how far along are you?
Yeah, so look, I think what we're trying to do is de-risk the project technically as well as keep expanding it. So we've commenced a feasibility study. That includes our environmental baseline work and social baseline work. So we've completed, you've got to have a 12-month collection of data. So we've done our dry season survey. That didn't show any impediments on the environmental side for the development. The wet season survey is underway now. So that will collect us all our baseline work that we need to submit for our ESIA documents. And then we need to wrap in the feasibility study for mining plans and things to go for your mining licence. So we've engaged in that process. We're engaging the government in that process in terms of regular meetings with all levels of government in terms of this is what we want to do, this is what we need from you, and what do you need from us in terms of delivery of information. So when we get to that point next year sometime that we submit our mining licence application, everybody's aware of the project. It's not a surprise to anybody. They've all been involved in that.
And what's the relationship like with local stakeholders? Are there any? Are you near any local or sort of any tribes or any villages, anything along those lines that could disrupt the project?
No, look, I think we've got our local villages. The project area and the project footprint will not require relocation of any people, which is fortunate. There's no artisanal miners on the 3 project areas, the main 3 project areas. The local village is about 6 k's away. It's on the other side of the sealed National Highway. The Gamba village, we have a formalised engagement with that community. We do programs in the community. We let them know what we're doing. Part of that engagement, we have free land access. So when the artisanal miners are on things and we want to go there, they will move away, and have done for Caracara, for example. But it's a good relationship at the current time. It's always a balance, and I think the development of the project will have a significant benefit for the local communities as well as for our shareholders.
Just want to bring you in here. Can you talk to us a little bit about the neighbours in the region? Who obviously got to mention Barrick there. Is there anyone else? Is there any operating mines nearby? What does the landscape look like?
In Senegal, there's a number of operating mines, Endeavours there, of course, IronGold, Barrick, if we've spoken about. We're only 10 kilometres or so from a significant endowment of ounces. So there are operating mines there. This will be not the first one, but obviously it's going to be a fairly significant economic contribution to Senegal. It's a supportive government, good jurisdiction, a good place to work, lots of positives. From an economic standpoint, it's certainly well wanted, and we're required. And obviously, mining is it's a good industry, certainly for the country.
And you've been there before? So.
Yeah, I have. I was involved with a private company called Toro Gold, which we built a project probably about an hour or so away from where we are. Got it from construction, development, put it into production, poured gold, and we ended up transacting that to Resolute, another Australian listed company, who's also active in the area as well. So there's a number of mid-tiers who are keen on Senegal, and I think in the next few years it's going to show a lot more activity. It's really been underexplored. There's always been the theory on this major geological structure that most of the major deposits have been on the eastern side of the structure. We're showing evidence that the western side could potentially host a number of significant structures as well.
Going on the assumption that, like most companies or junior or development companies, they're potentially interest from a major or mid-tier is never a bad thing. Potentially that could be a route for you. Say that isn't a route for you, and you do go down the production route and get this into production yourselves. What are obviously you're working on the DFS at the moment. You're doing some drilling to increase the resource. What are the real key catalysts here for you to continue progressing this project?
Things that de-risk the project, obviously making it bigger is priority number one, and continuing to do all the other necessary steps to de-risk it: environmental permitting, licensing, strong engagement with the government. I mean, it's really where we said we have to present those options to the shareholders. That's our job. That's our role. There's no doubt that we could take it as a team through to construction and development, put it into operation. We've done it before, not just in Senegal, but other countries in West Africa with a collective experience. We've been in the industry a number of years. Worked in Mali. The last company I worked with was Papillon, which we sold to B2, which is the Fekola project. So that's a significant project. So the options will need to be considered as we move this through the next phase, but there's lots of interest, but there's also it's also upon us to make it as best we can, because it's a very executable project. Economics are incredibly strong, look very compelling. We can execute it. As Andrew has said, there's no sort of impediments or restrictions about how we develop this or who develops it. So it's actually in a nice sweet spot.
Is there any processing capacity nearby that you'd be able to essentially truck this to?
No. We're kind of the pioneers of someone who builds a plant in this location will be the sort of the kingmaker of the opportunities, because it'll all come to one central location. So whether it's us, Barrick, someone else, that's to be determined. But clearly, it's going to be a repetition of what's on the eastern side of this geological structure. It will happen on the west side. It's just going to be a function of time.
Brilliant. Okay. Talking of time, looking back at the last 12 months, as a management team, what are you most proud of?
Well, as chairman, I think what we've done is we've reset the business. We now have a base in Perth in Australia. We have a network of first-rate contractors we work with. We have a first-rate team. We're building out the team as we go. We've just employed a CFO. We have a presence. We also have a good in-country team, which is obviously important. So we've recruited people from had worked with me previously in Senegal. So they've got relationships that you can leverage off. They've got the experience. It's a can-do attitude, so we'll get things done. So that's the important. And in 18 months, we've advanced the project. We haven't sat around thinking about it. We've certainly been very active, and we continue to be active on the ground. So, yeah.
And I guess for those looking at this over the next 12 months, key catalysts, key drivers of value really that you anticipate the company will be in.
As an exploration company, priority is to grow your resource. but grow it with economic ounces. It's not just a function of adding ounces, it's a function of adding, positive economic ounces, and that's the priority number one. And then obviously, doing all those other ancillary, tasks around that is important, and doing them well. No shortcuts, do it to, first world standards, has to be done properly. So you set the company up to, obviously move in different directions on that basis then.
Mark, Andrew, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Thank you, Peter.